even the parts I don't like. My heart is yours forever. Even the parts I try to hide. My heart is yours forever. Every room belongs to you. My heart is yours forever. My heart is yours forever. Come and consume every room. It all belongs to you. It all belongs to you. Come and consume every room. It all belongs to you. It all belongs to you. Oh yeah. Come and consume every room. It all belongs to you. Yeah. Come and consume every room. It all belongs. All belongs. With no competition, with no distractions. Yeah. You can. No competition, with no distractions. You can. No competition, no distractions. You can. One my heart, you got it, you got it, you got it. If you want my yes, you got it, you got it, you got it. If you want my time, you got it, you got it, you got it. If you want my mind, yeah, you got it, you got it, yeah, yeah, you got it. If you want my plans, you got it, you got it. You got it. If you want my dreams, you got it. You got it. There's nothing I withhold from you. You got it. You got it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's nothing I withhold from you. You got it. You got it. You got it. There's nothing I withhold from you. You got it. You got it. Yeah. You got it. There's nothing I withhold from you. You got it. You got it. You got it. There's nothing I withhold from you. You got it. You got it. You got it. There's nothing I withhold from you. You got it. Present your bodies living sacrifices, holy and acceptable. It's our reasonable service. It's the least we can do. Give our hearts to you. It's the least we can do. Give our lives to you.
Good morning. Welcome to St. Mark's. Whether you're watching online or with us in the house, we're just grateful that you chose to worship with us this morning. Take my life and let it be consecrated, Lord, to Thee. Take my moments and my days, let them flow in ceaseless praise. Take my hands and let them move at the impulse of Thy love. Take my feet and let them be swift and beautiful for Thee. Take my voice and let me sing, always only for my King. Take my lips and let them be filled with messages from Thee. Take my silver and my gold, not a mite would I withhold. Take my intellect and use every power as You would choose. Take my hand, all of me. It's all for Thee. Take my will and make it Thine. It shall be no longer mine. Take my heart, it is Thine own. It shall be Thy royal throne. Take my love, my Lord, I pour at Your feet its treasure store. Take myself and I will be ever only all for Thee. Take myself and I will be ever only all for Thee. All of me. It's all for thee.
It's all for thee.
You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you. I worship you. 'Cause you are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. You are here, touching every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, healing every life. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, turning lives around. I worship you. I worship you. And you are here, mending every heart. I worship you. I worship you. 'Cause you are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God. Sing, that is who you are. 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 Who you are. That is who you are. Yes, you are. Waymaker, miracle worker, waymaker, miracle worker, yeah. And everybody sing, even when I don't see it, even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop. We're gonna lift that up. it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop, no. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop working. You never stop, no. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. 'Cause that is who you are. That is who you are. That is who you are. Tonight is who you are. Who you are. That is who you are. Sing this with us, Waymaker. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are. Father, we thank you that no matter what darkness we're going through, that you're the light that guides us through it. That no matter what plans are upended or what heartbreak we may be going through, Lord, that you're still working all things for good and that you're still working miracles in our lives, Father. So let our prayer this morning just be thank you for who you are. Amen. And y'all can have a seat.
Whether you're here in person or watching online, welcome to SMC. We're glad you joined us. If you're new, please visit smc.church and click the I'm New button. We'd love to get to know you. If you'd like to give to SMC and our mission of making Jesus famous by becoming more like him, text SMC Give to 77977 or give online at smc.church/give. When parents have their children dedicated or baptized, presenting themselves and their child to God, they also receive the support of the SMC community. Our next child dedication will be shown during the service on Sunday, March 14th, but will be recorded prior to that date. If you're interested in dedicating your child or having your child baptized, sign up online at smc.church/dedications or contact Molly Vaughn. Connect is our 4-part series where we go deeper in connecting to God, purpose, family, and freedom. Connect is also the starting point for joining the SMC faith community as a member. The next cycle of Connect class begins Sunday, March 7th at 9 a.m. in the Guilford Room, formerly known as the Parlor. Sign up online today or find out more about Connect at smc.church/connect. James, the half-brother of Jesus, wrote, "My dear friends, if you know people who have wandered away from God's truth, don't write them off. Go after them. Get them back, and you will have rescued precious lives from destruction and prevented an epidemic of wandering away from God." We invite you to join us either in person or online next Sunday, March 7th, as we begin our Easter preaching series. All of us have had moments when we wanted to say something about our faith or invite a friend or acquaintance to church, and we shrink back and often don't say anything. Who knows how many of those openings slip through our fingers? These conversations happen in almost every arena of our daily life, and each time provides us with a chance to say a good word for Jesus. Nobody knows how many times God has anointed those conversations to open the floodgate to the Easter miracle. Join Bob and our elders as we spend the coming weeks to renew our devotion to keeping our eyes and hearts wide open when the time is right to start a meaningful conversation. Bob is going to teach us how the moments can happen naturally and without fear of rejection or stepping in over our heads. The Spirit of God is ready to use this series to prepare SMC for an Easter to be remembered. Jesus said, "You are the salt of the earth." See you next week as we kick off this series, Out of the Salt Shaker, Becoming a Contagious Church. For those of you who want to go deeper into this series, Bob and Joanne Soliday will be hosting a Sunday evening discussion starting next Sunday, March 7th. The discussion will be held in person in the Worship Center from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. You can also engage by watching and chatting from home through our website, smc.church. This will be a discussion you do not want to miss.
What a moment you have brought me to, such a freedom I have found in you. You're the healer who makes all things new. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm not going back, I'm moving ahead. I'm here to declare to you, my past is over in you. All things are made new. I surrendered my life to Christ. I'm moving forward. You have risen with all power in your hands. You have given me a second chance. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Yeah, 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 yeah. I'm not going back, I'm moving ahead. I'm here to declare to you, my past is over in you. All things are made new. Surrender my life to Christ. I'm moving, I'm not going back. I'm moving ahead. I'm here to declare to you, my past is over in you. All things are made new. Surrender my life to Christ. I'm moving forward. I said I'm moving forward. Oh, yes I am. 'Cause you make all things new. Yes, you make all things new, and I will follow you forward. Oh, yes, I will. 'Cause you make all things new. Yes, you do. And I will follow you forward. Not going back. Gonna declare to you, my past is over in you. Things are made new. Surrender my life to Christ. I'm moving forward.
That was really good. Say, by the way, I'm seeing many more of you. So do like this if you've had 2 vaccinations. Look around there, y'all. Welcome back to church. You know what? It was about 1 year ago that we started hearing this word corona. Y'all remember that? And then on March 15th, everything was shut down, and who would have believed that we were almost in a year? Y'all like popsicles? This one's banana. I hate to waste a banana popsicle, but not for consumption, y'all. Hey, those of you who are watching us online, that's a real banana popsicle, and we're glad that you're here. I'm glad y'all are here too. I had two experiences last Saturday. One was the very first time in my life, and the other I had not done in more than 20 years. First thing is, I attended an Elon football game in February. Totally unheard of. I mean, truthfully, I don't know that I've ever seen any other college football game in February either. And the other thing I did last Saturday is that I had not done this in 2 decades, slightly more actually, is that I watched an Elon football game sitting in the stands with my wife. Now, that's not a statement about Susan or anything, but for the past 21 years, I've been on the sidelines for Elon football, and quite frankly, Susan likes it that way. Nobody to bother her, and she can do what she wants to do. But now, because of COVID restrictions, not only has the 2020 season been shifted over to the spring of 21, but only coaches, players, and medical staff are allowed on the sidelines. Go figure. Now, last week turned out to be a really great college football game, especially because the good guys won. But I'm going to tell you something. It wasn't the same. Not even close. I was never a part of that game last week. Now, as the team pastor, we had free tickets, and that was okay, but I felt a little cheated. There were a couple of positives sitting in the stands, not the least of which was spending a cold, sunny afternoon with Susan, and that wasn't that bad. But there was absolutely, and the other thing is, and Susan kind of whispered this in my ear. She said, "Bob, there is absolutely zero chance of you having an unfortunate collision down on the sidelines and wind up in a wheelchair," which happened once, cracked ribs, but no wheelchair. But anyway, y'all can figure that out. Talking to Susan during a football game was kind of cool because she knows many of those players herself, and I was actually surprised at her capacity to concentrate. But for me, just wasn't a part of the game. I was not allowed in the locker room before the game, so you don't get a sense of those pregame emotions from players and coaches. I missed the locker room speeches, which are sometimes pretty good. Missed the opportunity to be in there for a post-game victory celebration. It was just awkward, just not being in the game. One of the kids that I'm pretty close to got injured during the game, and ordinarily I would be the first person, with the exception of the medical people, to get to him and offer a word of encouragement. Missed that. There was not one single fist bump for a great play. Sometimes a kid will come off after making a mistake, and I can be one of those first people to grab the kid and shake him a little bit and encourage him. Our quarterback was starting his very first college football game ever, and he did extremely well. I would have been one of the first people to congratulate that kid on a job well done, but I had to settle for sending him a post-game text message. It's hard to be all in when you're 15 rows up in the grandstands. In the words of Wilbur Reese in his little book called $3 Worth of God, look at what he writes. He says, "I would like to buy $3 worth of God, please. Not enough to explode my soul or disturb my sleep, just enough to equal a cup of warm milk or a nap on a cold, rainy afternoon. I don't want enough of God to make me love people from the other side of the tracks. I don't want enough of God to be persuaded to give more generously or to sign up to volunteer. I don't want to be transformed or anything. I just want a little happiness added to my life. I want a pound of God in a paper sack. I'd like to buy $3 worth of God, please." Now, I would never suggest that any of us should settle for seats up in the grandstands of life, even if the seats are free. I'm telling you, the game is better when you're close up. And so is life with Jesus. $3 of God? Nah, not good. Well, we're going to talk about that, but we should pray first. So, God, we come before you now. We try so hard to trust you. And we're all over the place when it comes to trust. Thank you for not shoving us to the sidelines of life, but instead wrapping your arms around us and including us and encouraging us to be all in, to be a part of the action of what's happening around us. God, we're going to open up a short portion, really, of your word today, but it's full of truth that we need to see and feel and understand and then make application. So, God, help us, we pray. In Jesus' name, amen. Let me show you one of my favorite pictures that I'm able to see every single day at our home. And this one picture really does a great job at capturing what I want to talk about today. Take a look at this picture and those 4 hands. Those hands represent 4 women in my world that I've cherished for a long time. This would be, and this has been several years ago, as you can see. This would be my granddaughter, our granddaughter, Mary Marshall. This is Susan. I'm sorry, that's Mackenzie, our daughter. This is Susan. And that's my mother-in-law. She's been gone now for 6 or 7 years. Hands can tell you a lot, can't they? About the progress of life. 4 generations. Change hands. And it's the same. Some of you remember, do you remember the first time you ever looked at your hands and said, holy cow, those look like my parents' hands? The fact is that eventually everything in this world, including our hands, everything starts to decline. Now, in the world of science, they call that entropy. It's just a fancy word that you hear about in a physics class, but it simply means that anything in this universe, if you leave it unchecked and abandoned, it's going to start to move toward disorder. And eventually it's going to disintegrate into chaos and begin to show signs of age and weakness. The fact is, if you allow your life to go unattended, there's only one way you're going to drift. Nobody drifts upstream. We always drift south. We drift away from the plans and purposes and priorities of God for our life. Entropy means that this universe that we live in, it's winding down. It's wearing out. Everything in the whole universe is moving toward disorder instead of order. Life never moves in the other direction on its own. Let me give you some examples of entropy. Proverbs 24. I once walked by a field and the vineyard of a lazy fool. Thorns and weeds were everywhere, and the stone wall had fallen down. When I saw this, it taught me a lesson. Sleep a little, doze a little, fold your hands and twiddle your thumbs, then poverty will pounce on you like a bandit. Scarcity will attack you like an armed robber. Now, this was Solomon's way of describing entropy. About 3,000 years ago. I'm pretty sure he never had to suffer through a physics class or the second law of thermodynamics, but that was what he was talking about. Vineyards, if you leave a vineyard unattended, it's headed for catastrophe without attention. But here's what can happen when a winemaker is attentive and stands carefully on the sidelines of that vineyard every single day. Left unattended, the same thing happens to everything. Buildings just grow to disorder. Houses begin to dilapidate. Cars, we have seen that before. Even locker rooms can begin to show signs of wear and tear. In a practical way, entropy, that's what happens when a light bulb burns out, or clothes wear out, or cars rust out, or you know when you spin a top and the energy starts to disintegrate. Or even when a popsicle is left unattended. And you know something? Sooner or later, it's going to happen to us. Every single time. Now, if you're still not convinced about entropy, here's what you can do. Go home after this service, dig out your high school annual, and then go look in the mirror. And that's what it looks like. Are you convinced about entropy? Everything in this world is disintegrating, even if you halfway tend to it. Or as they like to say, it's just a matter of time, and it's going to happen. When we become apathetic, get that off, and careless, when we become indifferent or complacent in some area of our life, this thing called entropy sets in. Dreams die, hopes fade, the future out there is anybody's guess. And then we learn that even though things looked okay just yesterday, that doesn't mean that they're going to stay okay. Put any important thing in your life right now on autopilot, and you risk the disintegration of this thing called entropy. Entropy eventually can wreck everything. Certainly creates disorder and confusion in a church. For example, you show me a church that's focused and energized and the vision is clear. You show me a church where people dream big dreams that they imagine, and we're going to talk about this starting next weekend, they start to imagine what a difference they can make if they start to try to use their life as an influence. That church is alive and well, but then over time, a really dangerous thing can happen. Entropy can begin to set in, and the focus of a church begins to shift, and people look at each other and say, well, what's God calling us to do in a bunch? And then we wind up, if we're not careful, and we start to stray, we begin to focus on things that don't matter very much. And this is a church that says, just give us $3. We just want $3 worth of God. So let's talk about the darker side of what can happen to our passion if we take the low road. Let me illustrate it like this. If you go home today and you turn on the news and you see a report that there is a destructive earthquake has struck Southern California, there's going to be a twinge in you and you're going to say, oh no, not again. But then our hearts momentarily, they go out to those people and we say, wow, especially those who get displaced or whatever. But then in 2 or 3 minutes, we can just automatically turn our attention toward more pressing things like, is our favorite team playing this afternoon? Or maybe I just need a Sunday afternoon nap. But let's imagine for a minute that your daughter lives in Southern California. Everything changes, doesn't it? The phone lines are down and you're frantic. Watching a game or a Sunday afternoon nap becomes completely irrelevant. You're frantic trying to get in touch with your daughter. The neighbors your neighbors are gathered. The church is praying for some good news. And what might be a 5-minute footnote on the evening news suddenly it's consuming your life because you have a relationship with somebody who's there in the face of an earthquake. And that becomes your tipping point. Sometimes I wonder if the original plan of God, I'm talking about in those early days of creation, before sin entered the picture and sabotaged our hearts and pretty much everything else, I wonder if our hearts were created to care for everything and everybody on a deeper level. But then sin entered the picture and suddenly something was broken inside. Maybe it happened when you got your first job. And you thought to yourself, I think there might be some men and women in this company and they don't have the integrity or the character that I was hoping for. Maybe you've been married for 32 years, but then your trust started to implode because you discovered a hidden addiction or some other destructive choices that your spouse is making. And now you're thinking, I don't know if I can trust him or her. I might not even trust anybody ever again. What if during your teenage years, one of your parents just walked away from the family and now you're wondering, is that the way all parents are? We all know what it's like to be betrayed, lied to, deceived, have our trust broken. Sometimes we just decide we'll build walls around our hearts and we'll become extremely selective about whom to trust. But friends, listen up. When your heart is broken and your trust is shattered, your heart starts to develop some protective sharp edges. I like to call them calluses. It's like, I'm not going to let anybody hurt me again, so our heart begins to grow hard. And if we could hook your heart up to some kind of emotional heart monitor, you would be flatline. Nothing. You just don't feel anything anymore. You intended it to be that way. You've shut yourself off, and it starts to affect every area of your life and every relationship. I'll give you a couple of examples. You know what it's like when one of the television networks maybe shows the results of global poverty or malnutrition and disease? You've seen those pictures. Now, if our heart is just a little bit out of whack, you can just fumble around and find the channel deal, and you can change the channel because, out of sight, out of mind, out of our conscience responsibility, our hearts get, every time we do that, every time we look away from the TV screen, and I'm always tempted to do that, my heart gets a little harder every time that happens. Our staff and volunteers here do a great job at putting together creative videos to make our announcements. I mean, announcements are announcements, I get that, but they make our announcements compelling. I mean, like the one that you saw just a few moments ago. But truth be told, sometimes when that face of St. Mark's comes up on the screen and someone starts to talk about announcements, you just mentally check out, and maybe some of you at home just hit the mute button. Because, well, you're not going to get in the game anyway, and it's just easier if you don't have to listen to it. Sometimes we just change the channel. We don't click mute, but we just change the channel in our minds. More followers of Christ today, right now, this minute, are victims of persecution and oppression somewhere in this world than at any other time in the last 2,000 years. So why do we just shrug our shoulders when we read and hear those reports? Religious discrimination is on the rise everywhere in the world. And it is seriously just invading our land where you see this, if you're alive today, Christian values and beliefs are under constant scrutiny and attack. And still the American church just seems to be waddling along in la-la land. Like it's no big deal. Jesus is being marginalized in America today more than in any other time in my life. And tens of thousands of Jesus followers act like they don't give a rip. Something's happened in here. It could mean that we're just hopelessly naive, or what's worse is, it might mean that apathy and indifference are winning the battle. So we just say, hey, I just want $3 worth of God. I don't want enough of God that's going to make a difference or change something in my life. I know people who have become so cynical and sarcastic about life that they've almost developed an ability to not care about anything. Their heart has just stopped. It's stopped working. Their compassion is missing in action. I hate it when that happens to me, don't you? The Bible teaches that we were all handmade in the image of God. Imagine that. Look, you see that person sitting right beside you? That person is an image bearer of God. Now, they might not look like it right now, but I'm telling you, it's true. So what does that mean? What does that mean? It's a good question. I'll show you. Just 6 chapters into the Bible. 6 chapters into the human story. God is already having a reaction about the direction that things are going on planet Earth that He's created. The whole thing is starting to melt down faster than this popsicle. Entropy is already, nobody even knew about entropy but God, but the whole thing is beginning to disintegrate. And it gives God reason to pause. And God says, God takes a close-up look at the mess that our freedom has caused. And so it says in Genesis 6, the Lord observed the extent of human wickedness on the earth, and He saw that everything they thought or imagined was consistently and totally evil. So the Lord was sorry that He ever made them and put them on the earth. It broke His heart. That was just 6 chapters in. Now, I'm encouraged by that passage, because what it means is that our God He didn't just spin this universe into place and then walk away. But Genesis 6 talks about a God who made people in his image, and these people have started to break his heart. Do you ever wonder what God's heart's like now? And then when we get to the New Testament and we start to read the stories of Jesus, we get this compelling picture. This is what God is like. We get to see God up close and personal. Let me show you. Some of you know this story. Jesus is at the church, at a church service. He encounters a man with a paralyzed hand. Now, we're not sure exactly what happened to the guy's hand. Was it a stroke? It could have been something that happened at birth. Maybe it was an accident. But Jesus sees this guy, and he's immediately stirred with compassion. Jesus went into the synagogue again and noticed a man with a deformed hand. Since it was the Sabbath, Jesus' enemies watched him closely. Now, Jesus' enemies, that would be us, church people. If he healed the man's hand, they planned to accuse him of working on the Sabbath. Now, notice where this takes place. It's in the church, or it's in a Jewish synagogue on the Jewish Sabbath, which was Saturday. And you're probably thinking, man, that's the perfect place for some miraculous demonstration of compassion. The problem is that it was totally against Jewish law to practice medicine on the Sabbath, because that was considered work, and you can't work on the Sabbath. Every time I've studied this passage, I've wondered if those religious people who hated Jesus so, do y'all think he planted that man in the church that day? Just to see what Jesus would do. They knew Jesus was a sucker for broken and messed up people. Maybe they could catch him in a violation of the sacred law. So the religious leaders, they were standing there in the synagogue, and they jump into the discussion and they say, well, hold on, whoa, Rabbi, hold on here. You cannot legally serve this man's needs. Imagine Jesus rolling his eyes and saying, well, what do you mean I can't? You watch this, boys. Watch this. Jesus said to the man with the deformed hand, come and stand in front of everybody. It's almost like, Jesus could have taken the dude in the back room and done this little private miracle, but he said, no, stand right here in front of everybody, because these people say I can't do anything on the Sabbath. Then he turned to his critics and asked, does the law permit good deeds on the Sabbath, or is it a day for doing evil? Is this a day to save a life or destroy it? But they wouldn't answer him. That's because they couldn't answer that question. Don't you love the way Jesus just totally disarms the resistance of a crowd of onlookers and do-gooders? Just wanted $3 worth of God. These religious men have spent generations sabotaging the plans of God with their own agenda, hijacking the potential of what God eventually wanted to do on planet Earth. Watch this. Jesus was angry as he looked around at the people. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm not crazy about the possibility of making Jesus mad. But that's not the half of it. That word angry right there, it's not like a sudden outburst like road rage. That word means that their legalistic opposition stirred up the frustration in the spirit of Jesus, and that word angry means there was passion in his exasperation. But don't miss this. Jesus felt sorry for them because they were so stubborn. Now, you know something? I have all kinds of emotional reactions to stubborn people, but feeling sorry for them is not one of them. That short phrase, look at this, felt sorry, can actually be translated as grieved. The lack of compassion stirred up such intense emotion in Jesus. It's like, why can't you people get it? But once again, our English word just doesn't do justice. Notice that he felt sorry for them because they were what? Stubborn. That word is porosis. It means stubborn blindness. It means Jesus felt emotion deep in his spirit, not deeper than here. In our day, we would say, my heart was moved and stirred and broken. But their language was different. What they were saying, what Jesus felt sorry. What that word means, it was like Jesus said, my stomach is in knots. Made me feel sick to my stomach. What that means is that Jesus was a man of great compassion and emotion. And in order to demonstrate the intensity of his passion, watch this now. I want to fast forward, take you to a well-known passage near the end of Jesus' life. When we get to Luke chapter 23, Jesus has been arrested and charged with a crime that he did not commit. He endures a series of bogus trials. They bring in a bunch of corrupt and deceitful witnesses. He's found guilty of showing contempt for God. Blasphemy was the official accusation. Some of the Roman leaders, the political leaders, were concerned that Jesus was at least a destabilizing troublemaker, and perhaps one day he was going to lead an all-out rebellious insurrection. If you know the story, then you remember that Jesus was reluctantly sentenced to be crucified by the Roman governor, whose name was Pontius Pilate. He didn't want to, but he gave in. The last thing, you see, if you're the governor in Jerusalem, the last thing you want is for word to get back to Rome and to his boss, who in those days was Emperor Tiberius. Nobody wanted to let the word leak out to Tiberius that this governor is not able to keep the peace. These final hours of Jesus' life give us a crystal clear picture into the character of God. Luke 23. And I'm just going to read some selected verses because I want to help you to grab hold of this riveting drama that's happening in this moment. Crucifixion was a common form of capital punishment in first century Rome. Today we would not do it, not at all, but it was considered to be cruel and ruthless. But in those days, it was kind of a brutal culture. And the Roman government ruled with force and bully-style intimidation. Compassion, they probably didn't even have a word compassion in their language. Their system of justice was designed to make a strong statement about if you defy us, if you decide to rebel against us, there's a steep price to pay. You resist us, and here's what we're going to do. We're going to pound you to a cross and let you hang there until you die, and then we're going to take your crummy body and dump it in the landfill. So when the Romans were convinced that somebody was a disruptive threat, these reckless renegades were just systematically eliminated. It was a steep price to pay, for sure. But the Romans wanted everybody to know, if you challenge our power and authority, this is what happens to you. Jesus has endured an unfair trial. Evidently, not one single witness stood up on his behalf. He's totally innocent of all the charges that were leveled against him. But condemnation was the predictable conclusion. And this is where I'm going to pick up the story with you. Remember that the night before, this was Friday morning, on the night before on Thursday night, Jesus met with his disciples. This was their final time together before the crucifixion. And then right after dinner, Jesus heads over to a quiet place to be by himself. Late that Thursday night, you know the story, a group of soldiers come to arrest him. Throughout the night, there's no sleep. There's a series of phony trials. It was a total scam of justice. Jesus is physically and emotionally drained. He's empty. He's exhausted. He hasn't slept now in 36 hours. He was also beaten before the execution, which was designed to speed up the dying process. Physicians who have studied crucifixion in detail have said that in all likelihood, Jesus probably, his body would have been in shock from the beating alone, loss of blood, dehydration. So he was so weak that he was not able to manage the cross. Well, because the Romans wanted to show power, and they wanted to make sure that everybody else in the community understand, if you decide you want to rebel against us, crucifixion is a steep price to pay. So they expected you, now watch this, further humiliation, pick up your cross and carry it through the city streets to the place of execution so the whole rest of the community can get the message, mess with us, that's what you get. Luke 23. As they led Jesus away, a man named Simon, who was from Cyrene, happened to be coming in from the countryside. The soldiers seized him and put the cross on him and made him carry it behind Jesus. Cyrene was a coastal village in present-day Libya, North Africa. Isn't that interesting that an African was randomly chosen out of the crowd to carry the cross? Two others Both criminals were led out to be executed with him. Once again, it was common for several convicts to be executed at the same time. It added a little bit of drama, a little bit of fear to the process. So as far as we know, this crowd, and as far as this crowd of people knew, Jesus was just another defiant rebel. Wonder who those three guys are. Just a bunch of hoodlums who deserve to pay for their crimes. When they came to the place of execution, they nailed him to the cross, and the criminals were also crucified, one on his right side and one on his left. All right, now so far the story has been pretty ordinary. 3 dangerous criminals being publicly executed. It's just another day in the life of the citizens who live in an occupied country, occupied by a Roman government. They were a foreign intruder, but they had strong-armed, godless tactics to control people. If you were in Jerusalem that day and you had no idea who Jesus was, maybe you had a shop on the street, and here comes this mob of people. Happened all the time. And here comes this mob of people, and they're marching right past your business, and you look out the window and you see 2 or 3 people carrying crosses. I was just another day. Just your everyday garden variety prisoners. 3 guys getting what they deserve. But for just a few minutes, put yourself in the place of Jesus. And see if you can get in touch with the emotions. Jesus is in his late 20s. For the past several years, he's been completely invested in a very intense, emotionally draining public ministry. Lots of travel, no time off or vacations, high maintenance people just pulling in every direction, endless preaching responsibilities, constantly dealing with conflicts and controversies with the religious leaders. He chose a small group of inexperienced men, as you know, to tag along. He spent 3 years with these guys, preparing them to take on the responsibility of kingdom expansion. This is 24/7, 365. Jesus traveled with these 12. He coached them. They listened to his compelling sermons. They were eyewitnesses to all of his miracles. They had a front row seat to everything he did. And Jesus was ultimately going to someday hand over responsibility for God's plan to change the world. He was going to put it in their hands. The whole future of the movement would be built around those 12 men and what happened in the closing moments of Jesus' life. But, as you know, one turned on him and sold him out. One disowned him. And with the exception of one, the rest of his friends were anywhere and everywhere but the one place that Jesus needed them to be. Can you imagine what that abandonment must have felt like? Why wasn't there one person who had the courage to go to his trial and say, hey, look, I know the guy. He's not a problem. He's a good guy. I can vouch for him. But not one person stepped up to defend him. Not one. Where were all the people who tagged along behind him? Where were the thousands that he fed with bread and fish? Where were the people that he touched with healing power? Where were the ones who stood on the side of the mountains and cheered for his sermon? Jesus has totally invested his one and only life in thousands of people. He was known to preach sometimes to thousands at a time. Try to imagine the loneliness and the frustration of this moment. Where was everybody? That's what makes the next word in this story totally mind-boggling. Whenever I'm feeling just completely indifferent to my world around me and I'm just content with $3 worth of God, the next word stops me in my tracks and totally recalibrates my heart. Now you capture this picture. The man is completely deserted, soldiers mocking him, at least one of the criminals ridicule him. His mother is an eyewitness to this nightmare. Her heart must have been shattering in 1,000 pieces. Not one friend was willing to stand in for him. Jesus is experiencing total abandonment. And then this word, Father, forgive these people. Are you kidding me? In the language that Jesus spoke, Aramaic, the word is pater. Pater. Father. Papa. Don't hold it against them. They don't understand what it means. Seriously? That prayer totally blows me away. Let me illustrate it. I started my ministry in June 1974. I was a student pastor. I was serving 2 small churches. You've heard many stories about those places. I was barely 22 years old. I'd only been a college graduate for 3 weeks. Wasn't scheduled to start seminary until September. I had preached exactly 7 times in my life, and basically what that means is I had one sermon preached at 7 different places. I never officiated at a wedding or a funeral, never made a hospital visit. I had 0 leadership experience. What was I thinking? What were they thinking? I mean, they were probably thinking, hey, so they had a choice between me and some other guy. And, well, somebody must have said, hey, let's go with the kid. Who knows? Maybe he'll grow up fast. I had no idea how fast. Now, you fast forward 15 years later. By this time, I've been the pastor of SMC for more than a decade. So if you're around a place for 10 years or so, you've got some significant relational equity. St. Mark's was a good church, no question. It was a good church when I got here. But I was wondering, after about a decade, what would it take for a church that's been around for a long time to begin to focus their attention on the broken, the disappointed, the cynical, the skeptical, and even those who hold God in contempt? How do you reach people like that, I was wondering? What kinds of adjustments would we have to make in a church to make that happen? Would we need to modify how we've been doing church here for generations? And you'll not be surprised to learn that a small group of people got angry. Some very angry. And believe me, and you're thinking, well, it's not that big a deal, Bob, it's just a small group of people. Let me tell you something, when the minority is frustrated and vocal, it can be pretty unsettling. The distractions can sometimes be almost unbearable. It was especially hard when the attacks got personal. When there were lies, innuendos, whispers, and secret meetings and anonymous attacks on my integrity and my character. It's hard, I'm not kidding you. It was really hard when my kids would come home from school and tell me about a kid at St. Mark's Church who said to them, why is your dad trying to wreck our church? I wonder where they heard that. But I'm going to tell you, the straw that broke the camel's back was when my wife received an anonymous letter in the mail with some of the most outrageous lies and absurd threats of what was going to happen to me if I didn't quietly just bow out of SMC. Now, I had long ago learned how to dismiss the anonymous letters attacking me. But when I saw the brokenness in that woman's face and in her eyes, and when I saw her heart being shattered, it broke my spirit, and I was on the verge of defeat. I remember I had to go to Duke Hospital that afternoon to see one of our members who was there, and that unsigned letter that was not addressed to me, it was addressed to Susan, was laying right there on the car seat next to me. And I'm driving on 85 down toward Durham, and I'm thinking, all I can see is that woman's face standing in our kitchen. She's holding the letter with tears falling off her chin. So on my way back to Burlington, I pulled off the interstate. There's a McDonald's right there in Hillsboro, and I pulled off the interstate right there, and I reread the letter, and I started bawling, and I said, God, you've got the wrong guy. I never signed up for this part of it. So before I drove home to check on Susan, I stopped by a friend's office. This man's a business leader here in Burlington that I had a lot of respect for. So I walked in his office and I sort of thumped the letter like that on his desk, and I was choking back tears, and I looked at him and said, I'm done, man. I am done. I'm not going to keep doing this to my wife and family. With monster tears in his eyes, the man got up out of his chair, came around behind me, put his hands on my shoulders, and said, come on, Bob, you can't quit. And I thought, I wasn't quitting, was I? I didn't tell him I was going to quit. I said, I'm just not going to do this anymore. But his word was quit. And that word penetrated me like a knife in my heart because I'm not a quitter by nature. A few years later, one of the people who had been such a pain in my caboose, she had verbally been abusive in her attacks. She was in hospice care in the final stages of her life. Her daughter knew that our relationship had been stressful for quite some time. She called me and she wanted to know if I would come to see her mother. At first I thought, we got other pastors, I'll send one. But then I heard my friend saying, you can't quit. So I made the visit. Walked in the hospice house, sat down beside her. She was struggling to breathe. Her eyes were closed, so I didn't say anything. I just sat. Scrolling through the memories. Her daughter walked in and said, hey, Mom, Bob's here. Didn't you want to see him? And she roused up. Do you know what she said? I'm sorry. Do you know what I said? Me too. In that moment, it was crystal clear to me that there were two people in that room that night who desperately needed to be forgiven. Had she been a problem for me? You can't imagine. Had she been a vocal part of a group determined to hijack the future and the mission of SMC? No question. But both of us had made mistakes. And I had allowed her anger and her bitterness and the rumors that she and others had spread about me to make me cold and indifferent. There was apathy invading my life, and it was wrecking my heart and shattering relationships. A week later, I officiated at her funeral service in the sanctuary next door, standing room only. I'm pretty sure a lot of those people were there to see what I was going to say. Do I still get frustrated? Sometimes, but not very much anymore. Because God used that relationship in that moment to reboot my heart and to recalibrate my future. Friends, I'm telling you, spiritual apathy and indifference are killing the cause of Jesus today. There are tens of thousands of people, and they live within reach of our influence. And if you handed them a card that said, are you a Christian? They would check yes. And they're on the verge of quitting. And that's because we don't typically tell God never. What do we say? I'll get back to you. Maybe your last physical didn't turn out all that well, and you know you need to lose some weight and go to the gym. You don't say never. You just say, I'll get to that later. You need to get your finances under control and resist your spending. Have you ever wanted to be able to give generously, but you can't see a way to do that? You're not saying never. You're saying, I'm going to call a financial advisor. One of these days, I'm going to do that. Maybe your spiritual life is just on empty. You need to get involved in a church. You need to connect with a community group. You're not saying never. You're saying, when the kids get a little older and my job is not so demanding. Bob, I bet when I get a little older, I'm going to have more time to devote to my relationship with God. It's not never. It's just when my life settles down. Hey, do you know when life settles down? When you demand it and when you decide. I'm going to be more attentive to my spouse. I'm not going to miss another one of my kids' games or recitals. I'm going to start going to the recovery program. I'm going to the gym. I'm going to get out of debt. I'm going to pursue a relationship with Jesus. I'm going to start reading the Bible. I'm going to get involved in a study group or a community group. But if it's all talk, nothing is going to change. You have to demand it and then decide. The new preaching series that starts next week, we're going to focus on all that and so much more. Try not to miss a single week if you can help so. No matter where you are in your journey, this is going to be helpful. We can learn to say, I think I need to make something of my life. I think I really need to get in the game. I'm tired of sitting in the grandstands. I'm going to move to the sidelines, and I'm going to be there when somebody calls my name. Do you know what that melting popsicle needs? I bet it needs a pep talk. Come on, guy. Come on, you can do it. This popsicle needs a freezer to stop the melting. Otherwise, entropy, negligence is going to waste this snack. You know what we call it? We'll just settle. $3 worth of God will do me. There are more than 500 pieces in this jigsaw puzzle. Susan likes jigsaw puzzles. I asked her yesterday, I said, Susan, how long would I have to shake this before it looks like that right there? And she said at least 100 years. No, somebody's going to have to sit down and start putting the pieces together. A couple of years ago, our grandson, he kind of got into Legos. He can sometimes spend hours and hours at the kitchen table assembling the next design. That's my grandson. And this is Walt. He goes here. He's 7 years old. He's also, as you can see, into Lego designs. But now watch this. One of our young adult church members, he grew up in this church. He's been a master Legos builder. He's actually in his last year in dental school, believe it or not, right now. So you probably want that guy to work on your teeth one day. But look at this. I mean, that's just one thing. He's got things scattered all over his house. Hours and hours of patient creativity and energy necessary. See, the danger is we don't say never. We just say, well, right now where I am, I just need $3 worth of God, and it's wrecking some of our lives and limiting the cause of Jesus. So, anybody want to start shaking this and see if you can get the Eiffel Tower? No. Energy is the only thing that can intercept entropy. Legendary coach Bear Bryant, he used to remind his teams, listen to this, he would say, gentlemen, in our game today, there are going to be 4 or 5 plays that will determine the outcome. 4 or 5 plays will swing the momentum toward us or away from us. I don't know which plays these are going to be. You don't know which plays these will be. All you can do is go out there and give it all you have on each and every play. If you're doing that on all of those crucial plays, and if you catch our opponent giving less, that play is going to swing things in our direction. Now, if the bear were alive today, you know what he would say? Boys, you got to reboot it. But if you don't care how the game turns out, then $3 worth of God will probably do for you. But real life demands a decision. No turning back. I love you, SMC.
I have decided to
still will follow, though none go with me. I still will follow, no turning back, no turning everything. All I am and all I have to bring, I will give to you my everything. All I am and all I have to bring, I will give to you my everything. All I am and all I have to bring, I will give to you my everything. All I am and all I have to bring, I will give to you, and I will follow my heart's surrender. My Jesus, I am yours, and I will follow my life in your hands. My Jesus, I am yours, and I will follow my heart's surrender. My Jesus, I am yours, and I will follow my life in your hands. My Jesus, I am yours, everything. All I am and all I have to bring, I will give to you my everything. All I am and all I have to bring, I will give to you everything. All I am and all I have to bring, I will give to you.
Jesus, for thousands of years, you have been calling people to follow you. And even in the scriptures, God, every single individual had to make a choice on how close they were going to follow you. And every single day, they had to make the choice all over again. And it's the same with us. For so many of us in this room or watching online, we made a choice to begin following you. But we've learned day by day, year after year, that that decision cannot just be made once. It has to be made daily. So today's Sunday, and we choose to follow you again. Tomorrow's Monday, we'll make that choice all over again on how close to follow you and how much energy, how much passion, and how much love we direct towards you. We thank you for what you did for us and what you continue to do for us, and it deserves everything we've got. We give it all to you, Jesus. Amen. If you're here in the house or watching online, and maybe today's that day you make the first decision to follow Jesus, maybe it's something you've been considering for a while, and you've been thinking like, man, is Jesus who he says he is? And today you're like, you know what, I'm convinced, or maybe even halfway convinced, but I'm going to try this thing out. I want to invite you to begin to follow Jesus. You can do that. And for those of us that have been following him for a while, it starts all over again tomorrow morning. It's Monday, right? And so here's what I'd like for you to do. If you're in the house and you would like some help and some resources in knowing how, and maybe some partnerships and some relationships that we can help create for you to help you in your relationship with Christ, stop by Next Steps in the lobby. Every single Sunday, there'll be some folks out there ready to help you, to pray with you, to answer any questions you have, to help you get connected. Same thing for those of you that are watching online. All you have to do is to go to smc.church, click the button that says I'm new, and we would love for you to reach out to us, and we'll get back in touch with you and answer any questions you have, and also help you get connected as well. It's so good to have you guys here today. So glad to see so many of you back, and both online and also in the house. So have a great Sunday. Have a great week. God bless.
Father's endless mercy prepared a table for me. How can